You are listening to the Smart Home Choice Podcast, episode 34. And as always, my name is Gary Hibbert. Welcome. And today we're going to be talking to Mandy Branham. Now, if this is your first time listening, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. And this podcast is produced each and every month. And I've been doing this for a number of years now. And it's really to provide you with advice on wealth creation, mindset development, and from time to time, and I'd probably say, the most important is health. So when you get a minute, please check out our YouTube channel. And when you get there, just type in SHC Investor and please subscribe. And I'd also love to hear your feedback and put some comments in there as well too, because I'd really love to hear from you. And with that, let's get into today's show. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Mandy Branham, and she's on our show today. And Mandy has definitely become a leader, and I'd also say a well-respected educator in the world of real estate investing. Mandy first started investing in real estate back in around 2007. And for several years, she didn't really do a whole lot. And one miraculous day, she decided to turn the rockets on. And in the last couple of years, she's acquired, now listen to this, close to 40 homes through understanding the power of joint ventures. And I think that's such an important topic. And I really wanted to share this with you guys today. And Mandy did a phenomenal job. And on this call, here's what we're going to really kind of get into. We're going to jump into the mistakes she made in the beginning with her first few joint venture partners. The red flags to pick up on before partnering up, the best place to find joint venture partners, and why would somebody give you $100,000, and how to overcome this obstacle. And we get into a whole lot more. Now, during the call, we also switched gears for a bit, and we dove into a very important topic, which was on mindset. And we spent some time on this topic because I would say we both really strongly believe that if you don't get a good grasp on mindset, really understanding what it can do for you, wrapping your head around joint venture partnerships is going to be incredibly difficult. Now with that, I hope you guys all enjoy this month's show, and I will talk to you next month. Take care. All right, so thank you everybody for joining another Smart Home Choice podcast. My name is Gary Hibbert, and on the call today, I've got Mandy Branham. So Mandy, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
My pleasure, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And it's kind of funny, I guess, how we got together. Because I always start off with saying, my good friend, longtime friend that I've known for years, but we've only really kind of known each other now for a few weeks. And I was introduced to you by a mutual friend. So she said, you got to listen to her story. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think we've been friends on Facebook a lot longer, but in this investing world, you kind of connect with like-minded people, and even though you haven't met them, you realize that you've got so much in common. I'm sure we would have passed ways at a meeting or two along the way, but yeah, when we connected, it was instant conversation.
It was good, yeah. And then we went to an event together, and we hung out like we'd known each other for years, so it was a good time. I enjoyed it.
Exactly.
All right. So listen, with that, why don't we kind of jump right into it and, let everybody know who Mandy is and how and why did you get started into real estate investing?
I worked in a dental office for 12 years, and along that time we would go every year to a convention and come home gung-ho with all these new insights and latest technology, and I'd want to implement it all, and my dentist would be like, no, I think we've like this, everything the way that it is. So 12 years later, I was still sending out the same emails, I was still making the same phone calls. Nothing had structurally changed, and I realized that I was somebody that needed to be able to evolve. And so we were actually introduced to a network marketing company, and that started our personal development of ourselves. And we realized that, like I say we as in my husband and I, that the harder we work on ourselves and our financial future, the more rewards we got very quickly. And that was an obvious, easy connection to real estate to be able to say that if we do the work to these properties, if we put the work in to sign them and deal with tenants, we were getting the rewards of our efforts directly. So, our first property we bought, and a few years later we refinanced it, and we had this check in our hand for $38,000, which was significant. I mean, that was a good return for the amount of effort that we put into it. But I realized that one wasn't enough. $38,000 was not enough to put my two kids through school and give us, an extra vacation and, set us up for financial freedom. So that's when it was like, okay, how can we grow a portfolio larger than one to be able to create a financial security in the future?
Right. And then that first property, that was purchased when?
2007.
Okay. And then you sold it?
We still own it. It is still in our portfolio. So, we're actually in the process of refinancing it for what would be the second time. Possibly looking to pull out another conservative $40,000 to $50,000 on top of that original 38 that we got. So, and still continue to own it.
That's amazing. So what makes you, because, again, we've had some pretty good conversations since we've got to know each other, makes you that real estate expert, and how many deals have you done over what period of time? And I think this is the part that's going to be pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. So in 2014, Larry and I, we moved and kept that property that we'd moved from, which gave us 2 rental properties. And then as well, we had a little bit of extra cash and we bought a third one. So that third rental property that we were buying was a disaster at closing. I had broker fees, lender fees, people not telling me this. We had to cash RRSPs that they hadn't told us about, like all kinds of stuff. And I thought there has to be a better way. So at the end of 2014, we had 3 rental properties, because we did end up closing that horror show. And we joined a coaching group. So from 2014 to today, we've probably done 45 transactions, and own 42 properties. So a couple sales, a couple wholesales in there. So not necessarily properties in my portfolio, but transactions that I would have, undertaken along the way in 3 years.
That's incredible. So now I know the next question that everybody's thinking is how? Like, that's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. You go and the incredible thing about your story is that you did 3 in, 7 years, and then you blow it out of the water and then over 2 years. So how were you able to do that? Because you obviously didn't have all that money sitting in the bank account. And you're like, okay, you know what? I want to buy all these properties now.
Yeah. So, you certainly have the regular recycle of some of your own funds. So that original check that we had in our hands for $38,000, we bought a total fixer upper, and we significantly increased our own list, and we did it again. And at that point, I was starting to get some attraction through this coaching group that we had become part of. And I asked a mentor of mine, I said, how do I start attracting joint ventures to come on board? Because knowing that Larry and I, of course, didn't have an endless bank account of cash. And he smiled at me and he said, just keep doing what you're doing. People are already watching. And so the beauty of it was that the harder we worked and the returns that we got and the learning lessons that we had, then we started to attract people to kind of come to us and say, hey, I've been looking to invest into real estate, but I'm scared, I'm nervous, and I want to turn to you guys. Would you be interested in helping me? And so we built our portfolio around a combination of properties in our own name and corporations, but many with joint venture partners.
Right. And I mean, were you scared in the beginning when you did your first joint venture? Because I know a lot of people are in the beginning, right?
Yeah. So I had my first three joint venture partners actually are never ended up being joint venture partners. If we were to talk about horror stories right up front, my first three, one was my parents, who upon closing got so scared. The property had a small little fire on a balcony. And so, of course, closing had to be delayed until there was a building permit opened and whatever. And my parents just, they left. They were done. They couldn't handle this unsurety and whatnot. The second joint venture, she wanted to do it on her own. She wasn't sure. She was so, on the fence about things. So off she flew. It's kind of like birds on a fence, and off she went. The third joint venture, wanted to be a 50-50 working partner and financial partner. And 80% of the way through the project, I had to call him up and parent him. I say parent because I was parenting an adult. And I said, look, we're supposed to be 50-50 on this. You can come and complete the rest of the renovation, or I'll pay you out as a private money lender. I'll give you a good return for what you have into it. But if you can't do 50% of the work, then I'll have to ask you to back out. So he very nicely called and said, we will not be able to upkeep our end of the partnership. So I paid him all of his money back plus a good percentage of the return. And that was the third JV that kind of got dissolved, before I got my true first joint venture.
Right. And I mean, you know what? That's probably good that you went through that, because, you understand at that point in time what type of a JV partner that you're looking for, and what you're also, just as equally important, what you're not looking for. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question then is, so what are some of the red flags for, say, a passive, partner?
Yeah, great point, because, people think that, well, if you have money, then I want you as a partner. But I kind of realized that, I had some requirements, of my partners. Now, again, the more sophisticated you get, the cleaner your requirements become. And, I do want to kind of put a disclaimer that things that you might accept, for your first joint venture or your second joint venture to kind of get your deals rolling and your confidence and stuff doesn't necessarily have to be how you structure your 10th or 20th joint venture. But, so some of the things that I look for now, of course, is a certain capital requirement. When I ask somebody for $100,000, I want to make sure that it's not their last $100,000. I want to know that if we are doing a renovation and we happen to need another 20 or 30,000, that, that they would be able to come up with that, possible reserve fund. I want to know, when we discuss timelines of a project, for me to partner with a 95-year-old for a long-term buy and hold, I want to know that if he's 100 years old, is that going to be okay? So maybe, if we're looking at somebody who has, that wants to retire and has given me 10 to 15 years, that's a great length of time. So timelines of what each partner is looking for, and a knowledge level. I find that there's many educated real estate investors who know the benefits of real estate in a diversified portfolio, but they're also educated enough to know that they don't have to do the work on that property. But the benefits of having it in a portfolio is where the importance lies. And so I look for somebody that is educated in the real estate market. And then a nervous level. I definitely have a nervous partner, and she admits to it, but I cannot have somebody calling me, on the 2nd of every month saying the tenant hasn't paid. Is everything okay? She needs to understand that as the working expert on my side, I have it all under control. Don't call me until the 3rd or send an email because, we do all of our N4s on the 2nd. And there's very appropriate reasons why tenants are delayed or whatever. So a nervous level of a partner is something else that I kind of look for.
Right. Those are all really good points. I mean, what I got out of that was, you don't want to take their last $100,000, and you don't want somebody, always worried about, where is that last penny going, right? Because it does make for
Correct.
nervousness, the timeline, and knowledge. So those are all really good points.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's more like on the partner that's got the money. Now, what about, like, would you work with another real estate joint venture partner who's an expert?
So I have been on both sides of the coin. So I own real estate, of course, just my husband and I. I own real estate as the expert partner. So I partner with a financial partner, but I'm also the financial partner who has partnered with a young couple who had something that I didn't have, which is mortgage qualification space. But I had the money. They didn't have the money, but they have the expertise. He's the property manager of the property. They're doing some minor little renovations to the property. And so, yeah, I've worked with both sides. I've been the working partner and the financial partner. Okay. And both sides have worked out.
That's good. That's good. And so, and I know a lot of people always ask this question, because I know there's people that are going to be listening on this call and they don't have the money. And I mean, I know there was a time when I was completely flat broke as well too, looking for that joint venture partner. How easy is it to find somebody who's got the money and you don't?
What if I I sometimes use an analogy and I say, what comes first, the property or the partner? If, I've got a lot of people that say, hey, so, that I coach or consult along the way, to become expert joint venture partners. And they're like, yeah, they're honestly just looking for somebody with a heartbeat and a bank account. I said, what are you going to offer to them? Oh, well, I live in Barrie, and so I'm going to offer them a Barrie property. What property? What are you bringing to the table? And so, you kind of envision this table and you think, okay, if I'm going to come to the table and I'm asking for 50% of the deal, I need to know, and I'm asking for somebody to bring their portion. They're coming to the table with money. I better bring something that's really important. And so how do I attract people with great deals? And so when I find a great deal, that's when people's ears perk up. And I become an expert in that deal. I'm able to tell you the ROI. I'm going to be able to tell you the timelines. I'm going to be able to tell you what kind of permits we need and how long it's going to take. And I'm going to be able to tell you how much tenants will pay for rent when these units are done. I can have, I'll be able to have, research for you. I become an expert on that property. And when people then stand there and look at me, it's almost like they're just ready to say, just take my money. Where do I sign? Because it's not that the deal is so great. It's not like this, out of the universe kind of deal. It's just that I'm very confident in the property that I'm bringing to the table. And again, a partner is investing not only in a property, but mainly in you, in the working expert. So how do you present yourself? How knowledgeable are you? How confident are you? That's what a financial partner is looking for.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you hit on that point, because what you're really saying there, and it makes so much sense, is that it's not really the deal that you're selling. A lot of times, people make the mistake that they think that they've got to bring out the pro forma at the meeting. But if you sell yourself, people will believe in you and trust in you, and then they'll want to go along for that ride with Mandy, right?
Absolutely. So again, we've got, for our coaching group, we meet every 90 days. And it's just become known now that I bring deals with me every time there's a meeting, which means I'm always, I'm keeping up to date with what the current market conditions are. And it is also known that, I do this full time. And I'm not saying when I started I was part-time, definitely part-time. and you definitely can start as an expert partner working part-time in this, but people start to turn to you for knowledge, for guidance, for advice. And all you're doing is bringing a deal and bringing another deal and bringing another deal and saying, hey, remember that one I brought 90 days ago? Well, I closed on it with the partner. It's now completed as a legal duplex. We were able to refinance it. And just so you know, we had a X amount of a return. And so if every 90 days, if, every quarter you're bringing updates on what your last deals were, then your track record is speaking for itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you share with us some examples of the way that you've structured your joint venture deals? Like if somebody's bringing in the money or somebody's only bringing in half of the money, how does that work and what does that look like?
So very recently I had some partners say to me, hey, why don't we consider possibly a different split than what I usually do. So my typical split is 50-50. And there was a part of, and they wanted me to consider me taking 40 and them taking 60. And I sometimes take these learning lessons as, you know what, without being upset about this, because I know that I certainly bring, enough value to get 50% of the deal. But so I explored it for them. And so I explored a 60-40 split. I even explored a 70-30 split. Now there's different things that kind of come along with each one of these, but the standard 50-50 split is that my partners would bring all the down payment money, all the renovation money. They would qualify for the mortgage. They would carry the property for the length of time, but that's budgeted in, that's budgeted into the renovation cost, is carrying cost. And I project manage the whole renovation. I put in the first tenants and lead the show kind of thing until we refinance, and then we have property management kick in afterwards. So in one example, without getting too technical on this podcast, if we did a 50-50 split, both joint ventures in this example would make $144,000 in 10 years. So then we explored a 60-40 split. And the only difference between the 50-50 was that if I was going to do all the work to be the general contractor, I was going to take an $8,000 project management fee that would be paid afterwards. So if we did a 60-40 split, my partners would receive $159,000 and I would receive only $129,000 after 10 years. So a significant difference in the 60-40. So then I offered to them the possibility of a 70-30 split. And the difference in a 70-30 split is that I received all the cash flow for the 10 years that we had the property and they received none. Whereas in the other two examples, we would split the cash flow 50-50. So every month, any equity over and above all the costs, we would split. So the 70-30 split ended up that the financial partner made $149,000 and myself at 30% of the equity would receive $135,000. So it came down that of the three options, that I would not accept option number 2, which was a 60-40 split, because I just didn't feel that I was getting an appropriate return for the time and effort that I had into this property. And so I offered them a 50-50 or a 70-30. And they were quite happy to go back to the 50-50 split. So it's nice to be able to offer them options. And depending on who the financial partner is and what their position is, could make them decide on a different split than what usually is available.
And would you find that most of the investors that you've worked with, if you've proposed that option, that they're usually just doing the 50-50? You
know what? I strongly lead towards 50-50. The only time that, well, not the only time, I have some partners that make a very high significant income. So they have cash, hence why they're investing in real estate. But they don't need the extra $250, maybe even $300 a month cash flow, because it just gets taxed at their very high tax rate. And so option number 3 of a 70-30 split might be very much up their alley. To be able to say, look, take the cash flow for the next 10 years. I don't want it being added to my high income already. But when we sell it, then, you know what, I will certainly accept that higher equity return at the end. And then, you know, I would be fine with a 30% return of equity because I would have received cash flow all the way along.
Right. So where are you finding these type of joint venture partners?
You know what? I'm part of a coaching group. I surround myself with like-minded individuals. I attend various meetings such as your meeting, a Durham region meeting, a Newmarket meeting. And again, when you're around these people and you say, hey, I've got a great deal, a real estate investor will know a great deal when they see one. And if they've got the capital to be able to invest, then it's a great connection. So surrounding myself with like-minded people for sure.
Okay. And did you ever go back to like where you used to work and go to your coworkers?
Nope.
No. Go ahead.
I have more coworkers as tenants than I do as joint venture partners. I have 0 family members as joint venture partners. You know what? I shouldn't say that. My young niece and nephew are the ones that I was the financial partner for. But these 2 are keeners. They are soaking up all the learning. They're asking me so many good questions. You know, and if I had a joint venture at their age, oh my gosh, where would we be right now? Like, they're all over it. Their first house is a duplex. They love it. They're going to have that in their portfolio for a long time. They're going to move on, whatever that kind of looks like. They actually said they want to move to another duplex, just a little bit of a larger one. But right. They're so smart. I would invest with them again for sure. But,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's great to hear those type of stories, you know, especially at that age when they're young like that, and they're just really kind of taking it all in and soaking it up.
For sure. You know what? I talk to young people all the time who say, you know, who are the ones coming out of college, university, and don't necessarily have the down payment to be able to put into things. And I said, but look at you. You could renovate anything. You can paint and put trim up and doors, and you can live in it. So, you know, I really prep them to how they can attract a joint venture and why someone like myself would invest with them. And so it's just a belief system. It's just creating the belief that why would somebody give you $100,000? Here's actually a great question for people to build their confidence, as to becoming a working expert. Why would somebody give you $100,000? And I say 100, Gary, because in my area, I could still, with 100,000, or close enough there to buy and renovate a property, with only 100,000. Now, if we're talking GTA, you know, obviously that's probably not enough, but in my Simcoe County area, that's plenty. So the mental block for a young joint venture or for any new joint venture is to realize the belief and the value that you bring equal to the amount of money that a joint venture partner is putting on the table. How are you worth $100,000? What's your power team worth? What's your knowledge worth? What's your time worth? What's your negotiation skills worth? What's your quickness to be able to act on a property because you can go and view it in 5 minutes as it comes on the market rather than having to wait until a Saturday or Sunday when someone has a couple days off? What is the value of you having, you know, the deposit money available quite quickly to secure this property? So I make all of these lists and I could see in my own self where I had $100,000 worth of value to offer to this financial partner to then bring me the $100,000.
Right. Yeah. So you're sitting down and you're analyzing and understanding your true value, what you're bringing to that table. Because at the end of the day, that partner, like the money partner, it is really just, and I say just bringing the money and sometimes maybe just qualifying for the property, but everything else that you're bringing to that table, from the team to the accountant to the lawyer to the bookkeeper to like everything, managing it. I honestly believe in many cases, sometimes it's actually valued more. And so many people undervalue that aspect of it.
I totally agree with you. And I've really only come to that realization, probably over the last 6 months, to be able to say, wow, I really definitely have 50% value, if not more. But there's no greed in it either. They still have something that I don't, which is the capital and the financing availability. But yeah, so now when you start to look at larger properties, maybe some larger multifamilies, and you're asking somebody for $200,000, you can in your own mind say, okay, well, I saw where my $100,000 was. I can just, see a little bit more, analyze what I'm bringing to the table to be able to increase my value up to $200,000.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you get there, which kind of leads into my next question now, is really the mindset. And once you understand the mindset and how that all works and comes together and you believe in yourself, that's where you understand and truly know what you're bringing to the table. So I know you talked about personal development. And you have a library on wheels. Tell us a little bit more, about maybe the top 3 things that you listen to or live by.
Top 3 things. Yes. So my car is a university on wheels, and there's always some sort of CD that I have playing in my car, whether that be Success Magazine, Darren Hardy, a mentor of mine is John D. Martini. Jim Rohn is somebody, of course, that I quote
love Jim Rohn. He's my favorite.
He is so my favorite. And so I journal every morning, whether it be for 5 minutes or, my book is just full of all kinds of different ideas or strategies or brain dumps to be able to just get some stuff out. So it's on paper. So I would say top 3 would be listening to things in my car. I'm really utilizing my time, and filling my head with what I want it to be filled with, not useless news and, distractions and unimportant information that kind of deters me from my goals. I choose to fill my mind with what I need to be filled with. So I listen to things in the car, I journal, and I take me time a lot. Me and my dog going for walks, connections. We went for a beautiful snowshoe, my daughter and I, on the weekend. Just really connecting to my family would be, the 3 things, to be able to, balance my busy life.
Yeah. You know what? And I really like that you talk about, the mindset and that you listen to it in your car, because I can honestly tell you that when I started doing that, this was back in around 2008, 2009, that it completely changed my life. And I remember this one time, this is when I was still working at TD Bank, and I was listening to it on the way into work. We're going out for lunch now, and a couple of my friends jump in the car, and I turn the car on, and Jim Rohn starts speaking, and they look at me like, "You actually listened to this garbage?" And I was embarrassed because my mindset was still changing, like I hadn't gotten to where I am today. And I'm like, no, my wife, she listens to it, And I can tell you, when I got to the point to around, say, 2013, 2014, when I was getting close to leaving now, and they would jump in the car, I'd play for them like, hey, you guys need to listen to Jim Rohn. You need to listen to Brian Tracy. You need to, because it 100% transformed the person who I was, back in 2007, 2008 to where I am today. And it's a continuing journey,
And
it really is important.
So easy. Like, if you were to honestly say, hey, do you think that listening to an audio in your car instead of listening to the radio is going to have a long-term effect on your life, I probably would have told you at the start, you're crazy. But it's like, one of my favorite books is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And it's the small little things over time that add up to large, significant changes. But we don't realize the small little compounds. All we realize is at the end, so Darren would say, how did I get so fat? How did I get to this place of divorce? How did I get in debt so far? And it's like, well, you didn't think of that when you went to McDonald's and when you chose to go out for a beer with the boys instead of going home to your wife. And you didn't choose that, to say, hey, let's go grocery shopping instead of let's go out for dinner again and again. And it's not those one night things. It's the combination of those things that add up. And, 5 or 10 years later, you get to this point and you go, how did I get here? So
yeah,
it's so easy.
It is, but sometimes I think when it's so easy that people think, well, it can be because it's just too easy. But it's all, you know what it is? It's like a big ocean liner. You're the big ship, and it's like trying to turn that ship around. And people expect it just to turn around on a dime, and it doesn't. It does take time, and that's what those audio CDs or DVDs or whatever, USB drives now, whatever.
Yeah.
That is what that's doing to your mindset. Because don't forget, you were thinking like this for the last 30, 40, however old you are, years. It's going to take a couple years for it to shift.
Yep. Podcasts now, of course, here we are. People are going to be listening to this. And this is one of those things like, congratulations, you're listening to this, not listening to the doom and gloom of what's going on in, all these other spots. So you're choosing what you put into your mind. So when I started listening to these things, it was talking about smiling and just put a smile on your face and just put a smile on your face. And so as I'm driving in traffic, I thought, this is silly. I'm going to try it though. So I sat in my car and I had this smile on my face. I'm totally by myself. And I'm looking around, but all I did was have a smile on my face. And I thought, hey, who's going to notice? Is it really even going to make a matter? And I turned my head and there's this guy at this red light and I got this weird smile on my face and he smiled because I was smiling. And I thought, am I affecting other people? I'm affecting myself with this smile, but now I'm affecting other people with my smile. Now, could his day have been turned around? Could that moment have just been a different moment? Because of my smile. And I thought, so the better of a person that I become, the better that I will be able to be to everybody, even strangers in the car next to me, just in my ripple effect, in my presence. And so I felt like I have, that I had a duty to become the best person that I could be so that I could share with other people, all the beauty that I had to offer. And so that I could allow them to be the best version of themselves as well. It's like you're giving yourself permission, and you're giving those around you permission as well.
Yeah, you become this magnet, and then you start to attract the same kind of energy signature to you, right? Some people don't like the smile and they might run away, right? Because you're not the same level as you, but other people will attract to you, and those are the people that you want, in your inner circle, right? So I'm glad we touched on the mindset.
Yep.
Sure.
Which is a perfect lead into something else that we did 5 years ago. Again, how did we build a joint venture portfolio this size? We kind of go back. We're educating ourselves. We're educating ourselves in real estate and becoming better people. We looked at who we were surrounded by. And did we like what they had, and did we want to have what they had? Just my husband and I and our little circle of friends, and we realized that we didn't necessarily like the influence that our circle of friends were having on us. And so slowly, we still think these people are very nice people and love them where they're at, but they weren't the ones growing in the direction that we wanted to go. And so our circle of influence changed very, very much.
Yeah, that's so true. It really is. I put a podcast out. I don't know if you saw it with Stefan Arnio,
I
and
did.
yeah, it was a really really fun podcast I did with them. And anyway, somebody had replied to it and said, "Hey, really informative. I enjoyed the information." But what I'm gathering, though, is obviously you have to have knowledge and all that, but it also takes money to make money. And see, so if you, again, what we're talking about, if you don't have the knowledge and you don't have the mindset, which I think is probably more important, I think the mindset is actually the most important piece. If you don't get that mindset, it makes you to kind of think that way. Whereas like, no, you need money to make money. And that's just something that he's probably heard his whole entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So I thought it was really interesting. But I get it. I get it because I was there at one point in time too, and I'm sure you were as well.
We were at the real estate wealth forum, one of those things that Tony Robbins attended in Toronto in 2017 there for the last 4 hours. And there was a gentleman on stage. I apologize. I forget who it was, but his words were spot on. And he said, many people have a broke mentality. And it was quite a funny thing because he was going on about different words and, what he described as a broke mentality. And so something like those words right there, you have to have money to make money. He would call that a broke mentality. Whereas, somebody who says, well, again, where do I have the money? Money's not, money is just a form of transaction. It is not the only form of transaction. Knowledge is a method of transaction. Somebody has the knowledge. They always say, if Warren Buffett were to have an hour of a lunch appointment, up for auction, how much would somebody pay to have lunch with Warren Buffett for an hour? Probably a very significant amount of money. But his knowledge is so high that it's worth paying for an hour of his time. But if somebody who's negative nanny and doesn't work on themselves and how much would you pay to have lunch with him? You'd say, well, maybe I wouldn't even buy his lunch. Maybe he'd have to buy me lunch if he wants to sit with me. So, the more knowledge you have, money is just one form of transaction in our world. And there's various other forms of wealth, finances being just one of them. And that's a whole other podcast.
It is, right? And once you understand the attraction piece of it, like, it'd be no different than walking around all day with a hammer. Well, you wouldn't do that. You just go and get the hammer when you needed it to fix something. Well, same thing with money. If I don't need it right now, I'll attract it when I'm ready to. Like, if I'm looking at, so now I want to buy a multi-unit, I don't have the money. Hey, I now know how to attract it, to attract the people to me, to attract the deal to me. But,
absolutely.
I'm glad we touched on this because I think it's an important piece. I know sometimes these podcasts, grow a complete mind of their own, but I think it is important though to understand this. So let's kind of just jump back onto the JV stuff, which is really important. Is the agreements. What are some of the main ingredients that a JV agreement needs to have? And what should be in there?
So obviously the property that we're discussing, the term, the length of the term that this joint venture is going to be good for, who is responsible for what, so what parties. So a couple of my joint ventures will be, my early ones were in my personal name and my partner's personal name, whereas many of them now are in a corporation that I own is a joint venture with a corporation that my partners own. So the joint venture agreement describes who this joint venture is between, and what the responsibilities of each partner are, quite described. So the financial partner would be responsible for holding a mortgage, in good standing, plus the down payment, plus the renovation costs. And then the working partner would be responsible for, project management of the renovations that will be taking place, placing of the tenants, coordinating of insurance, lawyers, financing, all that kind of stuff. And then it definitely lies out who will be getting back money and when. What does that look like? So in the majority of my joint ventures, upon any refinances or renegotiation of the mortgages, whether that be after a small renovation or a renovation, or that come to the end of the term of the mortgage. Typically ours are 5-year terms. Anytime we refinance, I choose to tell my financial partners that any capital gets paid back to them prior to us splitting any equity. So I really don't get paid until my financial partners have their capital back. That is a way that I've chosen to set it up. I know that other people will say, well, I require my partners to have a certain amount, a minimum amount left invested in the property. And so there would be equity split over and above, leaving the financial partner with some capital. So who gets their money back and when? How is it split and when? And then there's, honestly, Gary, there's so much legal jargon in my joint ventures. If one of my partners dies, if I happen to go through a divorce, if one of us needs out, we've got some clauses in there, the shotgun clause, got a lot of stuff that talks about if we need a new roof. And I say that should be, that's going to be a $10,000 repair. Do I have to bring 3 quotes to be able to show them? If they happen not to agree with me, things go into mediation before, all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of mediation in there. If we can't come to an agreement about something to do with the property, there's a mediator that gets involved. Yeah.
That's good. So, I mean, that's a good start for anybody that's listening. But I think, at the end of the day, what's really important though is obviously to sit down with a lawyer, and a real estate lawyer that has the experience in this realm, right?
I always say that my joint ventures are on middle ground. I start off with a relationship, and I believe that a good partnership is based on a good relationship. But any good partnership and relationship still needs a contract. And so we find that happy medium in the middle to be able to say we have a good relationship, that we can talk about this stuff, but we also have a contract in place in case there's something that we can't come to an agreement on.
Right. And once that's signed, that usually kind of goes in the drawer and hopefully it never has to come out again.
Right.
Right. And then, so how do you protect your interests? So let's say now you're not on title. What do you do?
Kind of like a hot topic. There are people that will put a lien on title. Mm-hmm. I have never done that. I know I sat on a panel at the forum last year and we all kind of looked at each other thinking, is someone going to say that they do it? And nobody on the panel had done it. Now that's not meaning that you can't do it. But that is one way that you can protect yourself. Every year that you, submit to the CRA your property, your joint venture property, you're submitting the same taxes, the same income and expenses as your partner. And then at the bottom of that said return, it says what percentage of ownership do you have? And you would write on there 50% ownership. So after a couple years of this being on your tax returns, the CRA is aware that you own this property 50-50. Your partners have been also putting it on there that they own the property. They only own 50% of the property. So, after a couple years, your protection is the fact that the CRA now can say, hey, you have been putting this on your taxes for a couple years. You do have ownership in the property. Just another way to be able to kind of protect yourself too.
Right. Okay. Thanks. What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in this?
Oh, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, well, you
I
have to
got it.
ask that.
You have to. And I'm so glad you do. And so, you know what? The big part of me will say, you're welcome, everybody, that I learned this, so that you don't have to. And that's the point of us sharing stories. So that great agreement that I just said everyone should sign, well, I didn't get it signed. And, my partners, we had a great relationship. We absolutely had a great relationship. We went to their house for Christmas, had drinks at their dining room table. This is the best properties we own, Mandy. We bought 2 side-by-side, beautiful, purpose-built duplexes. And you know what? They were watching my success. And one of my affirmations is I'm always in the right place at the right time to meet the right people to make the right deal. And these properties were just that kind of, those kind of deals. They were just great. So a year later, we go to refinance them. And I said, well, and each property at the time I had anticipated to them that would be worth $100,000 more than we had paid a year ago. Okay. So in the world of sharing things 50-50, I would have on the books had $100,000 worth of equity, and they would have had $100,000 worth of equity after a year. I prepped the properties. I put great tenants in there. I called all the tenants to let them know that an appraiser was coming through. I walked the appraiser through. I talked them all up. I gave them comparables. And I got a call 3 days after the appraisal from my partners to say, oh, we changed our mind. We don't feel comfortable in this joint venture. Thanks so much. See you later. And so the appraisals had been so good that my partners, in my eyes, they got greedy. They ended up paying me out. So I can't say this is a story that I've, lost everything. I learned a lot, and I got a payout of about 42,000. So nothing to necessarily complain about. But that was the worst that I had kind of gone through. To be able to say, hey, I get it. You're great people. And I can trust you. We can have this relationship, but sign on the dotted line because I'm not going through that again.
Right. Wow.
And they still come around. They still come around to meetings, and they're like, yeah, we have a portfolio. We got 2 great properties in it. And I'm thinking, wow, anyways, you're welcome. But I thank them as well because, as I say, I learned so much from that experience. And here I am sharing it with everybody so that they can learn as well. So I know that it was a balanced experience, that's for sure. I hold no grudges with them at all. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and what you're really saying is that you've learned from that experience, and that it won't happen to you again. And I always say that people that go through these experiences and make the mistakes and fall down flat on their face, they should always do seminars and presentations, because it would help so many people. So thanks for sharing that with us. So we're kind of getting to the end here, but and I think we touched on it briefly, but I don't think we really kind of nailed it. But where are you investing? And what's happening in the area for the future? And are you going to continue to invest in that location?
So I invest in Simcoe County. So Barrie, Orillia, Midland, Penetang. I certainly have my eye on Collingwood. Wasaga Beach is every municipality kind of has their own rules and regulations when it comes to creating secondary suites. So I specialize in 2 to 4 units and converting single family homes to duplexes. So when Wasaga Beach has some difficult bylaws to kind of be able to pass to create those secondary suites, it's not that the deals aren't there. It certainly just takes somebody that, has a little bit more patience and willing to, to do everything that they are required to do for that conversion. Whereas, I'm familiar with Midland and Orillia. Barrie has certainly come a long way with their regulations. So, if you're able to find a good deal in those areas, which I still believe there are some good deals to be able to be found, I'm absolutely still investing. I have 5 properties firmed up offers closing in February and March. So
you are a busy girl. That's amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
That's great. Listen, Mandy, just an incredible story. It's an honor getting a chance to sit down and talk with you again and do it over a podcast, so it's recorded and people can go back and listen to it as many times as they want now, because I thought there was a lot of great stuff that we talked about today. But if somebody wants to maybe do a joint venture with you or learn more about what you're doing and where you're investing, and where can they go to reach you and how can they contact you?
I direct people to my website, so mandybranham.com. And I'm going to be coming to Smart Choice meetup in February. So, certainly make notes and come and see me at various events around. I'm always open to, getting someone over a little bit of a hurdle or a little obstacle that they've run into. They can shoot me an email. I do some coaching and consulting if someone is looking to become a joint venture expert partner and they've got a property and they're looking for some guidance. They can certainly reach out to me that way as well, and always helping people get to the next level.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to put you in a spot here real quick. What's your favorite quote or saying? Just to just to end the call.
I'm always in the right place at the right time to meet the right people to make the right deal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that, and thanks again for your time, Mandy. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait for you, Gary. And I'm looking forward to having you come out to the event as well too.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Take care, and we will talk to you soon.
Happy investing.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for joining this month's podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed the content. Don't forget to check out smarthomechoice.ca to learn more about real estate investing and how we can help.